So you know what's fun about doing YouTube? The fact that you don't have a boss and you can practically do whatever you want. And it's always pretty nice to try a whole bunch of different things to see what you really like and to see what really fits your style. And that's pretty much what I'm doing here. I'm trying a whole bunch of different things out to really see what fits me and what I really like when it comes to being a content creator here on YouTube. You may have noticed my last couple of videos had been me over a web page talking about the tech news and the gaming news and things like that. I haven't really been behind a real natural camera in a couple of videos now, and now I'm back on my main normal camera, and this time I'm actually standing up because, like I said, I'm actually trying something a little bit new, a little bit fresh, a little bit something different and unique for my YouTube videos. And you read the title of this video, and the title of this video is actually going to be called What I Like About Borderlands. Or in this video, I'm pretty much just going to be talking about Borderlands, and don't mind if you hear a lot of equipment on, because actually as we speak I'm uploading a lot of YouTube videos because I am on that grind when it comes to uploading YouTube videos. But anyway, let's actually talk about Borderlands, because recently in the last couple of weeks I've actually started to go back to Borderlands. And if you don't know anything about me, I am a very huge Borderlands fan. I love everything about the Borderlands series. I just love the fact that it's a very fun shooter. I think I also love the fact that Borderlands, it just has so much replayability. The gunplay in that game is just super satisfying and super fun. I just love the whole atmosphere of the game. I just love the fact that it's also an RPG. So it's not just your standard shooter like Call of Duty or like Halo when it comes to the main campaign. It's actually trying to be a looter shooter. I know that's a term that's starting to become much more common because we have other games in the genre. We have things like Fallout, we have things like Destiny, and we probably have some other ones on the market. I think one of the newest ones that came to the market that's kind of in that same realm definitely has to be The Outer World. It's time to take inspiration from something like a Fallout, and since it's trying to take inspiration from something like a Fallout, I think it's safe to say that that's kind of in the same realm as like a looter shooter and things like that. But I really still do enjoy the Borderlands series as much as I do, and I think it's a flat out fantastic series. And if you haven't played Borderlands, I think you should play Borderlands definitely. And replaying Borderlands again for like the third or fourth time really makes me understand that Borderlands 3 is not as bad as I initially thought when I first reviewed Borderlands 3, because yes, I did review Borderlands 3 here on my YouTube channel, and when I first reviewed Borderlands 3 here on my YouTube channel, I had a whole bunch of mixed feelings about the game, because you do have to realize I am a person that is coming from Borderlands 2, and you did have to realize I was a person that put literally like 1,000+ hours in the Borderlands 3. Yes, I had like 9 characters. They were like level 50. I did everything. I just loved the farm. I just loved to replay the game. I just thought it was overall a perfect formula for a video game. And me being me, if you didn't know this, I'm also actually a very big shooting fan. I just love shooting games as well. So overall, it really did tick a lot of those boxes for me to make it a really great experience. And that's why I think I really love Borderlands. But yeah, coming from Borderlands 2, transitioning into Borderlands 3, a lot of things just really just didn't fit me, or I didn't really like as a person coming from the Borderlands series. I think it has to do with a lot. I think it really has to boil down to the fact that Borderlands 3 is just so similar to Borderlands 2, and since Borderlands 3 is just so similar to Borderlands 2, I think that's the main reason I didn't enjoy it as much as something like Borderlands 2. I think it's just boils down to the fact that Borderlands 3 really didn't try to change the genre, or really didn't try to change the franchise when it comes to the Borderlands games. It's a good game in its own right, but if you're coming from like a Borderlands 2 or a Borderlands 1, I can see why you may not like the game, or maybe you'll like the game but you won't rank it that high just because it's the same game. But why do companies always have to change the formula? The formula was already perfect in the first place. You look at Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2 is almost a flawless game. Sure, there are problems with that game, but overall, Borderlands 2 is a perfect game. And Borderlands 1 kind of aged bad, but in general, all the Borderlands games coming up to Borderlands 3 were pretty much a perfect game, and that's why so many people like the Borderlands series, just because if you look at something like the Borderlands series had a very good very good gameplay and a very good type of game when it comes to shooters. It's a looter shooter where you're going around leveling up your character, getting different skills and skill trees. Also, the whole principle behind Borderlands was the fact that they claim there's like trillions and billions of guns in the game. You'll never run out of guns. There's always loot to find everywhere. It's heavy on the loot aspect and things like that. I can see why so many people like the game, and that's also why I guess they decided to not change the formula when it actually comes to the Borderlands series. And I guess that is an okay thing, also considering that a lot of people may have never played something like a Borderlands 2, the Borderlands pre-sequel, or even the Borderlands 1 game. So it's okay to just pretty much redefine or make it a little bit better when it comes to the Borderlands formula, but not actually change the Borderlands formula. But now that I've actually played the game, I'm actually liking it so much more that, in fact, right now as we speak, if you were to ask me what my favorite Borderlands game is, it's actually going to be 3. And in this video, I'm going to explain why Borderlands 3 may actually be my favorite game in the genre as we speak. Now, you're going to see some clips right now in this video of me streaming this game, because I did start to stream this game here on my YouTube channel. And if you're not following me on YouTube, I really highly suggest you subscribe to me on YouTube, because I do stream quite frequently on my YouTube channel. I usually like to stream a lot of shooting games as well, because for me personally, I'm just a big shooting fan. I love all the shooting games. When it comes to shooting games in general, I just think they're super satisfying. They're very easy to get into. They're very relaxing for me. I've always grown up around shooting games, and shooting games are definitely my forte when it comes to video game genres. But going back to Borderlands 3, I've been streaming Borderlands 3, and after playing it for a while, I realized it's my favorite in the series. First of all, the reason why it's actually, I think, now my favorite series after visiting that game again, I do realize that the gun gameplay is just, for me, a little bit more satisfying than something like Borderlands 2. And if you're going to make a game where the main principle of the game is to shoot stuff in the world, then of course you want tight gunplay, and the gunplay, I think, for me, definitely outguns the gunplay in something like a Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2 is still an amazing game for what it is, and it still is a fun game, but at least compared to what Borderlands 3 has to offer, I just think the gunplay is a little bit tighter and a little bit more redefined, and it just feels a little bit more satisfying. And that's all you really want out of a franchise or out of a gun game. You want guns that are satisfying to shoot, because what's the point, of course, of playing a shooting game if the gun gameplay is not satisfying, or if the gun gameplay is not as redefined as you want? Then it does make sense you wouldn't actually want to play the game. But luckily, Borderlands 3 does improve on that aspect altogether. And then outside of the guns actually feeling really satisfying and slightly better to me than Borderlands 2, I do have to admit this, I think the gun quality in Borderlands 2 are just much more funner. You see a little bit more variety. I love some of the new guns. I do have to admit, not all the guns in the game are fun to shoot, because we have some that just aren't satisfying, or we have guns that don't sound good to shoot, because you don't want to shoot a big like assault rifle and then find out it shoots like a dart gun, or it shoots maybe like a BB gun or something like that, just unsatisfying to shoot. But luckily, most guns in the game are super satisfying to shoot. So basically what I'm saying is, overall, the gunplay and the guns in the game are just way better than something like a Borderlands 2. And another reason why I'm realizing that Borderlands 3 is definitely a better video game than something like Borderlands 2 is just the fact that you look at Borderlands 2 and it doesn't really have too much variety when it actually comes to the world. Thankfully, with Borderlands 3, they kind of fixed it when it comes to the world. Now you travel to different planets when it comes to Borderlands 3, and I'm realizing now that there's just a little bit more variety in the world. So if you're replaying the game, which the game is meant to be replayed because you level up your character, but in the first playthrough you can't even max your character out. You're supposed to replay in like a true Vault Hunter mode and Mayhem mode, which the game calls it in Borderlands 3. I'm actually realizing now, at least it gets less stale, and I actually like some of the planets in the game, and they do provide enough variety in the actual planet aspect of the game. That's why I think that also Borderlands 3 is just an overall better game for me, just more variety. Also, another reason why I think right now, after revisiting the game, I can safely say that Borderlands 3 is also maybe slightly better for me now, looking at it compared to Borderlands 2, is also the fact that the characters in the game are actually very good and pretty nice to play with, and there is a little bit more variety in that aspect as well. Granted, I really only played 2 characters in the game. I only played, I think, Mose, which has the Iron Bear, which is a generic mech, and then I also played Flak, I think, which does have these pets that follow you around, and you can customize the pets and things like that. And one big thing that Borderlands 3 does 100% better, I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me here, is just the fact that Borderlands 3 has hands down more bosses and better bosses, and some of the bosses are actually themed. I'm going to spoil one of the first bosses in the game that you get to about an hour into the game, so go ahead and skip around or mute the audio really quickly if you do not want to hear a slight spoiler. But basically, one of the first bosses in the game is kind of like an EDM arena where he has a whole bunch of speakers, and then he also has a whole bunch of things on the floor actually being lit up. And I think the thing with that boss that makes that boss very epic is the fact that he actually has patterns you have to worry about. You have to worry about every time the speaker goes off, electricity are going to be coming from the wires hitting the dance floor and things like that. I just love the fact that the enemies actually, that the bosses in the game, excuse me, actually have different patterns and things like that. And that's why I think Borderlands 3 is overall a better game. More guns, better variety in the worlds, more bosses, better boss encounters as well, and I think overall maybe now better classes when it actually comes to picking your character at the beginning of the game. So you can see overall, for me personally, Borderlands 3 is such a good experience. But if you're coming from something like Borderlands 2, like I said, they didn't really change the formula all too much. It's still Borderlands at the core of the game, and I can see why some people may not be blown away if you played Borderlands 1 or 2 or even the pre-sequel. And if you're coming from those games, I can see you not liking this game again if you never liked the series in the first place, because they didn't do anything outside the box to make this game really feel any different than something like a Borderlands 2 or Borderlands the pre-sequel and things like that. That actually makes me worried for the future if they were ever to do something like a Borderlands 4. Borderlands 4 does seem like it could possibly be a good idea, but just the fact that if they made it a little bit more similar to Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3, what do we really have to offer? You look at something like Splatoon. You may not be familiar with Splatoon, but Splatoon is a franchise from Nintendo. You look at that franchise, and from Splatoon 1 to Splatoon 2 really does feel like a Splatoon 2.5, and if they were to make a Splatoon 3, they would really have to change the formula, because the formula is getting kind of old at this point. Granted, Nintendo does have a little bit more slack to give, just because if you look at the Splatoon franchise is a franchise that came out on a dead console, the Wii U, so not many people played it in the first place. So Nintendo was probably like, well, we don't really have to change the formula all too much in Splatoon 2, just because not a lot of people played Splatoon 1 to begin with. So since not many people played it, we can play Splatoon 2 and make it very similar. It'll make new people play the game that never played it, since it's on a pretty new console, and just the fact that old fans won't mind all too much since they only played one Splatoon, but they cannot pull that off again. So hopefully, if they do make Borderlands 4, they do something new with the Borderlands franchise. Honestly, if you're to ask me right now that we have Borderlands 1, 2, 3, and the pre-sequel out there in the wild, I would honestly say we don't actually need more Borderlands games, because that's a lot of Borderlands games. And just the fact that the Borderlands franchise does have a lot of replayability, and they're some of the best co-op games you can actually play. 2 thumbs up to Gearbox for making one of my favorite franchises of all time. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.